Yep.
Okay, super. Thank you. So this is the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group meeting of the 27th of April, actually postponed from the 21st of April, so last week. So it's actually been a little bit of time since we had our last meeting, but we'll spend just a few moments going through those minutes in a moment. Adrian, any apologies for this evening?
Apologies from Councillor Perkin, Mr. Harold Goodwin and Councillor Barker will be joining us just 5 or 10 minutes late.
Okay, super. Thank you. And I think we'll start off without Councillor Barker. I don't think it's going to be too problematic for us. We'll check his declarations of interest when he arrives, but any declarations of interest for agenda items? Great. So first activity is just to have a quick look at the minutes from the 15th of March. So I'm kind of screen sharing those now. So as I said, it's actually quite a long time ago, not least because our meeting has been put back for a week. I don't know if anyone has anything in the minutes that I'd like to discuss. I just had one thing I was going to, well, two things I was going to mention. If that's okay. There were well, there were more than two actions. Some of the actions we'll talk about in a bit more detail as part of the main agenda, but I think it's worth noting one of the points discussed here is Chris joining us now. We'll just give him a moment.
Hello.
Welcome.
Very sorry I'm late.
It is no problem. You'll be pleased to know you haven't missed anything. We've literally just started. The planning meeting ran over, but I think we've established that given that we're making rapid progress and shouldn't be too long a meeting this evening. Chris, just before we've literally just started, any declarations of interest on the agenda?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, super. So as I was saying, where Chris joined us, very, very timely. I think just the one thing I wanted to mention from the last meeting, 15th of March, we discussed the Regulation 19 response to the Swale local plan. We did have a public meeting, which I think went very well. That meeting was held on the 23rd of March. Very kindly attended by James Freeman and Larissa Reid, the CEO of Swale Borough Council. So we're very glad for their attendance. The meeting was very well chaired by our very own Councillor Barker. So thank you very much for that, for facilitating that meeting. And following that meeting, I'm aware that both Councillor Barker and the Deputy Town Clerk have spent many hours compiling the council's response to that Reg 19, which I'm sure Councillor Barker will say a little bit about. But I'd just like to thank them on behalf of this group for doing that, because it's quite a significant piece of work to put together the Town Council's response, or should I say a response that reflects the feedback we received from residents. I don't know, Councillor Barker, if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to thank Adrienne for all her input as well. As you say, we've tried to draw the response from a myriad of sources, not least of which are the work that we've collectively done as a group in terms of surveys, engagements, exhibitions, and so to that end, it would have had all of our volunteers either directly or indirectly helping the response. As a consequence, because it draws on such a wide input, it in part is contradictory. Some people's views will have differed from others, and Adrian and I have tried to represent all viewpoints where possible. That I feel is a good thing to do. It's open, transparent, represents both the council's views and that of the residents, which is good. unfortunately, I feel to some degree it may water some elements down because it can be read from either angle. But it's difficult to do a response that's entirely reflective of quite a disparate range of inputs anyway. I think, strictly speaking, it's not a Reg 19 response, which clearly should be, looking for challenges to the plan from a planning and legal and regulatory perspective, and it does more than that. It captures the views of the town, which I felt was important, because at some point, the people are going to look and say, well, what was said about the local plan, and it's good to have captured that all. Some of it, I'm afraid, will probably go counter to the Swell Borough Council's desires, and talk very, heartily to the fact that there's a lot of people, and certainly that's captured in the surveys, that really disapprove of the extent of the development we've got. But that is what it is, and probably a fait accompli. But anyway, no, it's good. It's good to do it. It's good to make a response, and hopefully it's valuable.
Well, thank you both for your work on that. The only other comments I had on the previous minutes, one of the points we talked about was policies, in terms of a policy workshop, and that policy workshop did take place on Saturday the 27th of March. So we'll just touch briefly on policies this evening, but needless to say, that was a very useful meeting. We had quite a large participation from our volunteer group, which is always very welcome. And I hope that in the next iteration of the policies, we certainly see their input reflected in that. Jeff or Alison, any comments on the previous minutes?
No, they looked fine, absolutely.
Okay, can I propose?
Not that's not on the agenda, so we can crack on.
Yeah. Can I propose we accept?
Yeah. Seconder.
Thank you. And yeah, minutes accepted. Okay, super. Thank you. We just close this down. Right, so on to the agenda. I've actually covered agenda points
Yes. Yeah.
To approve the minutes and discuss matters arising. Fourth element is neighbourhood plan site allocation progress. So I can certainly give you a verbal update on that. We've had the draft from ACOM of their evaluation. Their evaluation essentially looked at two aspects: is the site suitable for development, and is the site available for development? Just in terms of that, so that they've managed to obviously conduct that appraisal as a desk-based exercise. So essentially, they look at a map, they look at satellite images, they look at the records with respect to land uses, flood risk, etc., and then they come to their draft conclusions. They're actually planning to come to Faversham in person. They're going to come on the 6th of May. I'm going to arrange to meet them very briefly for a coffee. The time hasn't been established yet, but everyone's welcome. Anyone's welcome to come and join. So it's on the 6th of May. Time to be determined. It will be during the working day, unfortunately, because that's obviously when they can do it. And what their intention is to visit the majority of the sites, so certainly the sites which have more levels of complexity with them, associated with them, and that will help them finalize their part of the site allocation. In terms of availability, there are a number of sites for which we haven't yet established whether they're available or not. Some of those sites are in private ownership. Some of those sites, two of those sites are owned by Swell Borough Council. And I understand we've now written the Swell Borough Council to ask them if those sites are available for development. We have a letter in draft to KCC to ask them if their 2 sites are available for development. One thing I think is worth discussing, obviously it's the KCC elections next week, which means I can imagine that every KCC member is somewhat distracted. So I was going to suggest, but happy to take anyone else's opinion on it, is probably to wait until post next week to write to KCC. Given that Kent being Kent, I'm sure we'll have exactly the same KCC councillors then as we do now, but of course anything could happen. And the last thing we want to do is to be writing to the wrong person. So if I have your agreement, we'll hold back until after the election, which is only next week.
Yeah, it's common sense, I think, John.
Yeah, great.
Just on the 6th, John.
The day you're having coffee, John.
Yes.
It's that day. Yeah.
Perfect.
On the 6th, I should be able to make that, a lot of that.
Jeff, can you make it, or Alison?
Yeah, I'm just checking the diary now.
Where will it be? Where would you...
Well, under the current circumstances, I think we'll literally just meet them outside somewhere in town for a coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I don't think there's a huge amount of value in us accompanying them. And equally, I don't think they particularly want us to accompany them, but certainly we should meet with them.
Okay. Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll put a placeholder in your diary and then a bit more information.
I'm fine.
Yeah, if it's raining, John, I'll leave you to it. If it's lovely and sunny,
We'll be under the Guildhall. We can sit under the Guildhall.
Okay. So the other updates in terms of site allocation or site selection. So the ACOM work is the first piece of the puzzle. Clearly, we will only take sites which are. Sorry, we have a guest, Alexander Dowding.
There was just the other 2 sites that I sent you a draft letter for today.
Yes, for
Just to check you're okay, and then that'll be a similar one to the care home. But just let me know, and that can go.
Yeah. So thank you. So one was Parker Steel, or not Parker Steel, Parker Building Supply.
It is.
And the other's the care home on the Jubilee estate.
Okay, great. So similarly, we'll just be writing to those landowners to understand whether their sites are available either immediately or at any point in the near future. Obviously, if the sites aren't available now, but are available over the lifespan of the plan, we can include them as potential sites for the future. The second part of the site selection obviously relates to the criteria that we will decide upon and then consult upon. So we have developed our site selection criteria. And just as a reminder, we are simply using the ones recommended by locality. So we've decided not to deviate from the bog standard site selection criteria because they're the model ones for a reason. They're very sensible and obviously defendable. Again, what we will be doing is putting those out for a short consultation, public consultation, during which time obviously people can comment on those, and then depending on the comments we've got, we'll either progress as is or we'll make some modifications as required. And then after that, so that'll be, I think, the week commencing the 10th. So we'll do that, Adrian, when we do the KCC bit as well. I think, again, doing it next week because of elections would be disruptive, I think, to introduce this element at this stage. So we commence on the 10th, they'll go out for consultation. And then towards the end of the month, I think that consultation, it's not a statutory consultation, but we'll put those out for a couple of weeks to see what feedback we get on them. And then after that, we can start our site selections. What I would say is, without preempting the outcome, I guess, looks like our guest has left. Without preempting the outcome, one of the criteria relates to agricultural land and greenfield space. And unsurprisingly, the criteria is in the preferences to develop on either previously developed or brownfield sites. So I think it'll actually wipe out a lot of the sites quite readily. So I think the sites that we'll be considering will be a small number, and I'm hoping we can actually, within a couple of days, evaluate them.
Does that align to the local plan policies as well? Is that?
No, these are completely our own criteria.
Yeah, no, I just wondered because I remember in the public meeting, I forgot the guy's name. He was saying that one of the questions was from Chris Taylor, which is why are some previously unacceptable sites now acceptable? And he said it's because we've run out of the kind of, actually no, sorry, I'm going off the wrong path. It was because they've run out of brownfield sites, but presumably for 200 houses, we have more than enough brownfield coming forward to.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And we've got a site which has come forward, has the potential for one dwelling, up to ones which have come forward for maybe, I think the George Wilson one, which I haven't seen actually. I think they presented to planning. I was just looking back at what they're proposing, and they're proposing around 40 sort of apartments. So that's probably the biggest site we've got. So all ours are small sites that lend themselves to brownfield. Whereas I think, Swell, we're looking for strategic housing allocations of, significant housing numbers. Yeah. So I think we're in a very, very different place.
Great.
Which is good because, I think, I'm happy to express my opinion on it because we'll go to consultation anyway. So ultimately, it's not up to me. But, I think if we can avoid building on more agricultural land around the town, it's nothing but a good thing.
That's good.
So that's it with respect to site allocation. So I think to summarize, by month end, we'll have our site selection criteria, the finalized work from ACOM, and we can go ahead and select the sites for allocation in the neighbourhood plan. It's not quite as simple as that. For each site, we're going to have to write not a detailed, but a small policy, essentially indicating what it's suitable for and how many units it's suitable for. But a lot of the work is done once we've identified the sites. So there's no other comments on that. We can move on to local green space.
Do you want me to pick up on this one, John? You've got me against it.
You can. I've got a few notes, Chris, but if you want me to kick off, and you can.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Unfortunately, I mean, I know that the local green space and corporate sites completed a couple of weeks ago now. I've done actually nothing on local green spaces in the intervening period. I've been focusing what little time I have on the local plan response. So I do recognise I need to pick up from where we left off on this. So yeah, that was my little update.
Yeah, well, preempting that, Chris, because I know you have been focusing on the local plan response. I just sort of looked at it. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think the call for nominations closed on the 12th of April. Which actually was only 2 weeks ago, so you haven't been sitting on it for a long time. I think the site selection criteria are determined by the NPPF, so I don't think there's any work for us to do. I think the task is to literally go out and evaluate those sites. I'm happy to participate in that. I would suggest that we engage one of our volunteer members, Matthew Hatchwell. I think Matthew would add, Matthew, we all know his credentials, but for the record, he by profession is an environmentalist. I think he has a huge amount of insight into the local green spaces. So I think he would certainly add a useful perspective.
John, and I think with all the work that he's done on this so far, he's got the information to his fingertips that he'll be able to react and respond in good time with that.
Yeah.
It may be worth noting actually, and maybe I don't need to declare an interest because it's not really an issue. I don't think the rec has come forward. I think the rec was proposed as a green space part of the local plan and therefore hasn't come forward in our call for sites. So it's not particularly relevant, but I guess John and I sit on the Faversham Municipal Charities trustee board, and that
You and I,
owns-
Chris,
Sorry?
Yeah.
Chris and I had a discussion, or part of a discussion last week, that was talking about a response to Reg 19 into Swale from the charities who own the rec, thinking that it was adequately protected. Isn't that right, Chris?
Yeah. I was probably working my way around to thinking that because it hasn't come in our call for sites and it was part of the local plans suggestion, it was a local green space, it probably passes us by quite happily on the neighbourhood plan. Nothing to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the one thing we are going to do, though, it's probably worth. I think you're all aware of it, but for the record, we will be reassessing the sites that have been previously rejected by Swell.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're using exactly the same criteria as Swell, so it doesn't mean we're going to suddenly recommend loads of sites that they haven't. But of course, we may have a different perspective, and I think discussing that with the Swell planners. Actually, I think they recognise that we have a unique perspective on it, because they're often viewing it. Well, they are viewing it from Sittingbourne.
Yeah.
Whereas being sort of residents and representatives for the town, we have a much more intimate understanding of the role that particular spaces play in the kind of community life of the town.
And I think, John, we highlighted, Chris and I, last week. And Chris, thanks for the backup with that survey. I think that really reinforced what we were saying, is that on the question that was posed to the community in our survey, the rec came out so high as an important site for the town.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And it is really the centre of our open space in many respects. But as was highlighted in our discussions, it is so protected by charitable and backed up by charitable aspirations and provisions that it didn't really need to be protected in the local plan, because
it's protected.
It's protected already.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think
going back to dates then, that we should walk around the local green spaces and try and co-opt Matthew Hatchwell into that. Perhaps if the next couple of days you and I have got to catch up anyway, haven't we, Adrienne, to sort of tie up a few bits on the local plan. Perhaps I can speak to Matthew Hatchwell in the intervening period and sort of see if there's any dates that are good for him, and
we have approached the subject with him.
You have?
Yeah, but we didn't actually say a specific date, did we? But he's aware that Saturday morning.
Yeah, Harold spoke with him, and Harold asked him about it, and he said he would be interested. So nothing's firmed up. But we thought before we even suggested that he would be useful, it would be sensible to ask if he would be interested.
Yeah,
he was interested in supporting.
That's fantastic.
I think
presumably we want to get that done in the next 2 to 3 weeks if we can.
Ideally, Chris, I think if we manage to get the housing or building site allocation and the LGS allocation done by early June, like literally tied down by early June, we'll be on track to have our draft done by the end of June. So I think times. I think we should. Well, just one thing that came up actually, and it came up in a kind of conversation I had with Harold, just a general conversation, and what's quite, because in terms of those local green spaces, I think having a dog, I'm kind of quite frequently walking around these green spaces, And some of them, in my humble opinion, are quite odd. I'll give you a good example. I think it's on, there is a space which essentially is a triangular grassy area with a fantastic willow tree on it. Now it's come up as a potential green space designation. But of course, it's a really, really tiny grass area, but it has a fantastic tree on it. And I think one of the things we should probably try to think a little bit creatively. So where there are,
PPO.
yeah, do tree protection orders rather than local green space designations where they seem to make more sense. But
Is
yeah,
that tree on publicly owned land?
it's the difficulty with the concept of publicly owned land. It's within a housing estate, and what I've come to discover is quite often no one knows who owns these little triangles of land because they were owned by the developer, but the developer just left them and no one's ever adopted them. And I think someone cut the grass, which would suggest they have some interest in it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, it was just an aside. I think in terms of environmental protection, there's more than one way to skin a cat, essentially. Okay, anything else on local green spaces? So I think noted Chris is to find a date with Matthew when we can do those evaluations. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my agenda, which I've misplaced. Okay, so next on the agenda is special policy areas. Now, I just sent Adrian a private note saying, Adrian, do you have the map of those areas? Did you find it, Adrian?
I've got it.
Can you share it, please?
How do I share mine? I know how to get.
Click on screen share and then click on the screen you want to share and then share it. It has to be open on your desktop generally.
Yeah, I've got it open.
So if you go to share.
Sorry. Shall I forward it to you quickly?
Yeah.
It's definitely open, but it's not.
I think I've just received it.
Sorry.
Second. Okay, all right, I got it. Will be a moment now just to share it. No, I share this with you and take it in the spirit that it's intended. It is a draft based on discussions that we've been having. But let me explain it to you, if that's okay. I can't quite remember what the color coding is, but I'm sure it'll come back to me over time.
It's on the right hand side, John, isn't it? It's got it on the right hand side.
Oh. I've got all you on my right hand side.
Yeah, the green is open space.
Yeah, mixed heritage, mixed community and industrial. Right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Great. I got it. Okay. So let me explain this to you before you comment on it, so I can kind of help you orientate you to it. So one of the things that we have discussed previously when talking about sites. And Faversham Creek is how we manage the issue of Faversham Creek and the Faversham Creek neighbourhood plan. And you know this, but just for the record, assuming our plan goes through, it'll supersede the Creek Neighbourhood Plan. And yet, you know, it would be foolish to not recognise that there's some really very positive elements of the Creek Neighbourhood Plan, which we would want to retain. So 2 of those areas, which are mentioned in the the Creek Neighbourhood Plan, are, I think you can see my cursor, the Brent's Industrial Estate and the Iron Wharf.
Iron Wharf.
Wharf, but certainly Iron Wharf, which are designated as non-residential areas, so sort of employment land or industrial use. I think just to reflect our previous discussions, and of course none of this is written in stone yet, but I think the general consensus through the group is we want to see those retained and not turned into housing development. So what we would propose then is to carry those 2 areas forward into the new neighbourhood plan, essentially to afford them protection from housing development, because I think we all agree that we need employment in the town. Both areas serve an important use, both in terms of employment but especially with Iron Wharf in terms of leisure as well, and character of the town. So those 2 areas could potentially be special areas that we carry forward. The green one here, so this is quite interesting.
Don't we own the green bit?
No.
On the bottom green one.
Here?
Yeah, that first one, that big square on the first bit, isn't that the town council's anyway?
This here?
That piece,
no, down.
That piece, the
Further down.
Crab Island bit, which is got the old bend of the creek in it, I took that over on behalf of Swale about 30 years ago. So that had been given to Swale by the developer of Faversham Reach.
Yeah.
And that piece, the long piece along Front Brent's, was an open space already.
Yeah.
Part of the housing estate.
So, Chris, the bit we own is in here, I think, which is the town. No, by Swale.
That's the town key.
Owned by Swale, isn't it? Sorry.
Owned by Swale.
Owned by Swale.
It is. It's owned by Swale.
So all of this is owned by Swale.
No, the town green, the piece in front of the Albion, to the west of the Albion, right on the frontage, had, I don't know if it still has, the classification of a town green.
Right.
Yeah.
So it isn't owned by the town council, but it is actually looked after. We've looked after it for some decades.
We had to contribute to the upkeep of that path. Do you remember, John?
Yeah, that's right. This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the piece behind the path towards Front Brent's Road there, the square, that's been a public open space.
Yeah.
It was part of my portfolio when I looked after leisure.
Yeah. So all of this, bar Crab Island, is designated local green space or protected. The only bit, ironically, that isn't is Crab Island, and Crab Island was nominated as a local green space to Swale Borough Council and wasn't taken forward. Obviously, we're going to appraise it again, but essentially, you know, let's not prejudge whether this comes forward as a local green space or not. That said, it's completely unsuitable for development. It'll never be developed.
Oh gosh. Well, there was also, John, there was also a caveat on the transfer that if it was ever used for development, the benefit would revert back to the original developer.
Right.
He retained that control over the site. He was dedicating it as open space to the borough.
Right.
And it was taken over as such because it was always going to be the access point for the Creekside Path.
Right.
It goes up to the Faversham Reach and through to the marshes.
Yes.
Along here, yes, controversially. So I think to summarize, the reason this is in green is because we anticipate it will remain green, and assuming that it goes the way we think it will go, we'll designate the last piece of it as a local green space. This bit, so we've got industrial green space. This piece of land we wish to identify as a special development area. It's the piece of land's in, I think, owned by 3 different parties. This is Ordnance Wharf, which is owned by one group. BMM Weston own this section here. This section here, I think, is owned by Swale, as far as I'm aware. Just a bit.
We've always maintained it.
Yeah, opposite Mike.
Yeah. So the idea is to designate this as a single special development area, and what that will mean in practice is mean that we will call out particular and specific guidance for that area. So these 2 bits of this bit of land has come forward in a call for sites for development. This piece of land didn't come forward in a call for sites, but we know that the owner has put forward planning permission for it previously. So the idea would be to develop a singular policy for this, which would apply to all the land in this area, irrespective of ownership, which is very different from the site allocation where you have single sites, single owner policies. This is multi-owner site, single policy, essentially.
Yeah, and John, we talked about this before, but I think it's worth saying again, that site is key to the Faversham Basin becoming a destination.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for community use and the mixed use that we've talked about before. And there have been some good schemes that show some commercial development there too, and the hospitality aspects of things. And I think potentially there's a source maybe of some section 106 there to assist us with the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just on that point, Jeff, you're absolutely right. The owner of the largest tract of it has already indicated that in the call for sites that they wish to bring it forward for mixed use. So a mixture of residential, retail, and actually importantly, community use. And it's very, very rare. You know, it's the only one instance I've seen in this neighborhood plan where a landowner comes forward and said they're interested in building for community use. So I think it's to be applauded.
Brilliant.
Let's see where it goes.
Absolutely.
The other special area, it's a different color because this is the area which is the gateway area, the Heritage Gateway, Maritime Gateway, all working titles. We haven't got a fixed name for it. It's in 3 different owners. Shepherd Neame own this section here, Swale Borough Council, the section in the middle, and Swan Key LLP own this section here. And similarly to this site here, the idea would be to have a single policy which covers all areas. Both Swan Key and the Chaff House have come forward in the call for sites as well. And I also know that, and I don't think I'm breaking any confidences here, but I know that certain community groups in the town have been in discussion with Swale Borough Council regarding setting up some sort of community interest company organization to take over the management of the town quay, hazard, what is currently the boxing club, etc. I can't really say any more than that because I know no more than that, but I know that those discussions are ongoing. But the idea would be that this would be a heritage-based area. Again, as you say, Jeff, to support the visitor economy. Yeah, largely.
Didn't we suggest as part of one of the kind of assets that we put forward as a request to the Borough Council, I think we do at the beginning of every civic year, didn't we put oh no, maybe something about TS.
I think we talked about when
the boxing club
has talked about TS Hazard before, I think, because that is quite fundamental. And if the Sea Cadets have got a much better purpose-built place on the inside the basin, then really that leaves the heritage potential. Although there's quite a lot of investment needed in TS Hazard. But as an asset, community asset around heritage, it's been talked about widely, John. You're right. And I think there are plans afoot to try and get community asset transfer back to the town for a group to operate that.
Yeah.
I was actually more concerned about, well, not more concerned, I mean, as concerned, and I probably should declare an interest in that. The Sea Cadets trustee board isn't particularly functioning at the moment, but I do sit on the trustee board for the Sea Cadets. And I was just as concerned about the boxing club.
Yeah. So Chris, all I could say at this stage is that there would be no plans to move anyone unless there was better alternative accommodation.
Okay.
And I think that's something that the plan will seek to balance, whether that's a possibility. You know, there's no guarantees, but yeah, I think, you know, it's, and when we talk about these areas, you know, we can designate them within a neighbourhood plan. It doesn't necessarily mean anything will happen to them for 5 years or more, you know, to be realistic, because there's no funding available. My understanding is that Swale are interested in retaining ownership, but putting the area on a long lease rather than transfer the asset, which is probably no bad thing given the costs involved in maintenance is quite substantial.
I know, again, some years ago when we changed the quay frontage to stop it falling into the creek of the town quay, it was quite expensive, and we managed to get a grant from English Heritage on it. So if it stays with the town, with the borough, then that's not a bad thing. But we need to try and get some control over that of what happens locally, I think.
Yeah. And then just to kind of finish off this map in terms of this area is either built out or is being built out within the. In fact, this map isn't 100% correct. Like I said, it's still a work in progress. This section here, well, this section here is currently being built out as we speak.
That's where that car wash place was for a bit, wasn't it? Is that right?
But that's still there. I was there yesterday. It's still there, but the site immediately on the town side of the car wash is being built now. The foundation's being put in.
Yeah.
The car wash is here, Chris.
Okay.
This site here has been built.
Okay, great.
So
that's the old oil terminal, and that's next to the old coach yard, which is now the car wash and a separate garage. Yeah.
So clearly, there's no point in carrying forward policies for areas that are built out. You know, it's just not rational. The idea, though, however, is to develop a policy for this area for a number of reasons. One, as you point out, the car wash area, which I think is described as the old coach works, or
that's it,
is indicated in the Coot neighbourhood plan for mixed use development. Obviously, that development has never taken place. It would seem sensible to carry that forward in some shape or form. And of course, I think the other important part of carrying this bit forward is this is an important kind of heritage area for the town, as well as an important part of the visitor destination. And I think it would be useful to carry that forward as such. Not least to protect it, so someone doesn't come along at some point and say, well, what we'll do is we'll just redevelop.
Doesn't Michael White own most of that?
He owns nearly all of it, yeah.
But there are some really significant buildings
there. But if we can retain what the creek plan had for that, which is protecting it, and that seems like a very good thing to me.
Yeah,
agreed.
So like I say, this is a work in progress, but I hope, you know, we don't need to make any decisions this evening, but you know, we'll certainly discuss this as the plan develops. But this is certainly the first attempt to say, well, these are areas of special interest that we want to have particular policies for outside of the other site allocations. Any further comments, or should we end it? Can Adrian, would you mind circulating this to everyone on the steering group? Yeah, I think you're on mute, but yes, I can forward it. Not a problem. Okay. Great.
Yep. So I'll just remove that one bit, and then
Yeah, that would be great.
yeah, okay, and then I'll forward it tomorrow.
All right. Update and policy drafting. I'll be extremely quick with this because there's not a lot to say. As I mentioned at the start, we did have our workshop on the 27th of March. The discussion following that workshop gave Hannah at Urban Vision a lot to think about. So she's been busy updating the policies, and Adrian gave her a gentle nudge this week, and she indicated that we'll be getting the next draft next week. So I think once we get that draft in, we probably need to give it another round of circulation for feedback. But you know, I think we're making good progress on it. That's all.
John, can I make an observation? As we were going through that and talking with Hannah on it, we were talking about the things that public have expressed that they would aspire to, look to see in the neighbourhood plan. And Hannah made it really clear to us there were some things that you could not put into the policy headings, but we could put in as a separate appendix, if you like. Yes. And I think really early on in the plan, in a couple of paragraphs, if you're a member of the public who's contributed to this, to be able to see where your contribution is and where the consensus has been drawn, it would be good just in a couple of paragraphs to explain the two elements of this, the policies and then the supporting aspirations and goals that we're all looking to go to in a summary form as Hannah does it. But if you like, so that it could be seen and owned by the people that we've consulted, and they can see their contributions across all the headings and in the annex.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that's a brilliant idea, because what's been clear to me, and I think all of us, you know, we've been on this journey for over 12 months. You know, I can only talk for myself, but I've learned a lot, and I think the whole process has, to some extent, been disappointing, because I think sometimes you think a neighbourhood plan can do more than it actually can. Fundamentally, it's a planning document, and I'd like to see something in there, like you suggest, at the start, that says, you know, through the process of developing this plan, we identified a number of areas which are of significant interest and importance to people who live in Faversham. Yeah. Not all of them can be addressed within the neighbourhood plan, but they are considered and listed in the back. I think that's really important, Jeff.
It's like within our vision as a collective community that we've developed together, and what we would aspire to, like the joining up of the recreation areas in the schools, the public open spaces, and joining all that up with the privately owned sites, so that you can see that we've got a strategy, and it complements what the town council's trying to do and representing the local people, and it all comes together that as concisely as we can do it.
Yeah, but no, I think it's a great idea, Jeff, and I think it will help people understand why the things that are important to them and other people aren't. There aren't policies on it. The reason there aren't policies on it is not because it's not important. It's because they're not planning matters, and we couldn't include them.
I've been in situations on projects that I've done with the community around the country off and on, and really sometimes they'll say, well, where's that? Where's that? I raised that. And if you've just got a brief qualification at the front where to look for whatever you've contributed, it really does show that it's a community document.
Yeah. So Jeff, hold that thought. I think Adrian will probably minute that, but I think hold that thought, because when we come to the next round and feeding back to Hannah, I think that's really, really important. Okay. Last item on the agenda before we look at any other business. One of the put it on the agenda because I know off the steering group meetings, a few people have raised it, is the necessity of having another public interaction. I think not least because we're all desperate to see members of the public and interact and describe what we've been doing. We were looking for a date in May to hold an exhibition in 12 Marketplace. I don't think that can happen because 12 Marketplace is under reconstruction at the moment, which means that, yeah, Jeff, I don't know if you know, but the Visitor Information Centre is going to be moving to 12 Marketplace.
Yeah, that's been long overdue. When we talked about it 30 years ago, and we're actually moving it forward, you know, what a conquest. Unbelievable. That's the result.
Yeah.
It's only taken a third of it though, Jeff. And once that petition wall goes in, there'll still be quite a nice exhibition space the other side as well.
Yeah.
So we can still use that. And then the display room at the back, we're well on our road with that. That's looking like next spring to be opening with the Magna Carta and everything in. So yeah, things are moving, Jeff.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Yeah, it's taken a new. I still call it a new council. It was taking a new council a couple of years to get, but you know, it takes a while, right? But things are happening. I think.
Yeah.
When you've got no money, it's like pulling teeth, isn't it?
I know.
It's trying to be innovative and creative.
Yeah.
But it looks as though progress is being made.
Definitely.
Hats off to all those that have made it happen.
So just on that, I don't know what you think. I don't think we don't have to have a big discussion on it, but I would still like us, even if it skids into June now, to hold some sort of exhibition. And just to be clear, it wouldn't be a public consultation. It's simply an exhibition saying this is what's happening in the neighbourhood plan. This is, and we discuss various elements of it.
John, and based on what we've just been saying in the earlier discussion, we could say, this is what you told us, this is what we did, and this is where we've heeded and listened to what people have said, and this is how we've put it into practice.
Yeah. In principle, are people happy with the idea of having an exhibition in, we'll call it the summer now, because June is summer, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I definitely am, John. I was thinking, so maybe I'm sort of taking this a step too far, but we are going to have to consult anyway, aren't we?
Yeah.
And maybe this exhibition comes before that consultation, but not long before, and maybe one bleeds into the other. So yes, I'm very happy with an exhibition. I think it's a good idea. It'd be good to spend a bit of thought and time on how we pull that together.
Chris, how does that fit into the timeline on your Gantt chart?
Funny enough, I was just thinking the same thing. I was thinking that I think, end up having to do some sort of consultation in July from memory. I haven't got it in front of me. I'll try and refresh that in the next couple of weeks and work out how that fits in with an exhibition.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that we probably then also want to think about exhibitions and promotions all the way through, pretty much from the end of the summer through till the referendum in hopefully the early middle of next year, don't we? And maybe some sort of permanent stuff needs to go up somehow that really just promotes what's going on. It's slightly detracting from the original purpose though, which is to really draw people's attention to what we've done. So Johnny, I'm very happy for Jimmy.
I do agree, Chris. There's no point in us having a having a non-consultation exhibition in June if we're going to have a consultation-based one in late July. So maybe we just wait until we're ready to do that. But I think it's good to have it on the agenda now, and maybe we can take it forward to our next steering group.
And we do need to get the dates in as well, because English Tourism Week is going in, I think, from the 21st of May to the 2nd of June.
Right.
So we've already pushed into June. I think the building works will probably go up until then. So we do need to get any dates that we want to reserve it in the diary.
I just imagine that either you're incredibly flexible or those feet behind you.
Yeah, it's just what I was thinking, Chris.
What's that?
You got
feet behind you.
Oh dear.
Why don't I try and rework the plan over the next week or so
Yeah.
See what dates are really, and actually start thinking about sort of promotion and events that we do over the next 9 months, because we're getting close to finishing now anyway. So I'll do that, and I'll circulate something, and we can then maybe get something in the diary.
Yeah.
Around that.
So Chris, just to help with the planning, I think, you know, we should set ourselves a stretch goal to try to get the draft certainly ready to share with Swell by end of June. I think, you know, we should.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Okay, great. That was the last item on the agenda, and I think we carry that forward. So that's
to conclude that, really, people need to appreciate the role of the neighbourhood plan in relation to the local plan.
Yes.
Because it is a meaningful document that will be accepted and be part of the local planning process, won't it?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that this is not being in vain, and don't vote against it at the referendum to get back at the local plan. It's actually putting our local views to reinforce what's in the local plan to try and protect the town.
I think what we could do with Jeff, and maybe this is thinking a couple of steps ahead, or even just one step ahead, but is to get a cross-party group together and try and get, you know, the main political parties in Faversham all to persuade their kind of membership to be positive about this plan. That may be some wishful thinking.
Oh, Chris.
Yeah.
You'd be able to walk to Southend easier, Chris.
It would be.
Across the estuary. But have you got a good consensus around the town council at the moment?
Yeah, but the town council is, dare I say it, largely consists of one political grouping.
I mean, it's interesting.
I couldn't possibly comment. I'm a neutral now.
Yeah.
We're all neutral. Yeah, actually, just one thing that came up this evening, actually, just as a point of interest. Alison, Adrian, and I were on the planning meeting earlier, and Chris Nicholson did a short presentation. They're going to be submitting a planning application for phase 2 of their Lady Dane development, Lady Dane farm development on Love Lane. And interestingly, clearly, they'll be submitting their application in the next 2 or 3 months, way ahead of when we have a neighbourhood plan in place. But they expressed a willingness. Now, you know, we'll see the colour of the money in terms of what they actually do, but they certainly expressed a willingness to understand things like our design code, you know, areas that we were keen to see, and without making any promises, indicated that they would try to ensure that what they're doing is broadly in line with what we'd like within the neighbourhood plan. I think that's a positive, you know, because you can show that already the neighbourhood plan, even if it's not in place, does have the ability to exert some influence. I think it'll be really helpful.
I think it implies that they're entering into the spirit of it rather than the letter of it.
Yeah,
and that's encouraging.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Good.
Good.
So I think that's a positive. Okay. Nothing more from me. Any other business?
Nope.
No, good for me.
No.
Great. Super. Thank you.
No, thank you, John and Chris. You're all doing extremely well, unbelievably well. Just keep going.